Hi everybody, this is Gil and welcome back to the shop. I'll kind of give you an update on what's been going on with the Model T. So here she is. And while we're at it, why don't we say hello to Buddy. Hey Buddy Boo, you being a good boy? Here you go. Okay. First thing is I want to wish you all a happy 4th of July. And I think the last time I made a video I was talking about working on the wheels. Now all 4 wheels are restored. I still have to put new tires on the back, but the rear ones will hold air and they're serviceable for the, for rolling anyway. After I finished putting in the new rear wheels, after I finished restoring the wheels, I decided to get busy replacing the cotter pins. Of course, Model Ts have cotter pins all over, and that's because they tend to vibrate and shake a bit, and so rather than let the bolts come loose, nuts and bolts come loose, there are cotter pins all over. So I set about replacing the cotter pins and tightening the bolts, and when I came to these shackles, I found that this driver's side shackle was cracked, which is of course dangerous. So I went ahead and, with the help of a couple of guys in the Model T forum, Steve Jelf and Martin Vowell, I went ahead and removed the shackles and replaced them with brand new ones. I then set about restoring the gas tank. Okay. Now the gas tank mounts under the cowl in the Model T. So you take a look inside here. It's right up under here. Okay, here's the gas tank. And it had a leak, and of course, it also had a lot of funk on the inside. So I removed the gas tank. That took a lot of wrestling. And I brought it to the guys at American Hermetics in Elmwood. And they dipped it and completely stripped it and got it back to me a couple of days later, all the way down to the bare metal. I then went ahead and sealed it with Red Coat, which is a really good sealer. It performs kind of a membrane on the inside of the tank, almost like a secondary tank. I also performed a small repair on a leak underneath. I then set about the business of putting the gas tank back in. That was even harder than taking it out, okay? Because I had to, you have to get it in just the right angle, and you have to get it in so that the outlet hole lines up perfectly on the firewall right here, so that you can attach the overflow pipe and the sediment bulb. I also sheathed the wiring harness. There's a wiring harness that goes underneath the gas tank, okay? And the original sheathing was made of cloth, and it was coming apart, and I always thought to myself, it would probably be safer if it were sealed in rubber. So what I did was I took a bicycle inner tube and I cut it open and slid the wiring through that, and then routed it around the tank rather than under the tank, okay? Now, getting back to the sediment bulb, it's a type of fuel filter, okay? The gas is gravity fed from the gas tank, which is up here in the cowl. It's gravity fed through the fuel line all the way down to the carburetor down here. And any crud that's in the tank will settle in the sediment bulb. So now it's all able to be fueled up, okay? But I'm still not ready to start it yet, okay? After I finished installing the gas tank and the new sediment bulb, I decided I needed to tighten up the exhaust pipe, okay? Now if you take a look here, you see this brass pack nut that connects the exhaust pipe to the exhaust manifold. That pack nut was never tight. So what I needed to do was loosen it in order to clean the threads on the exhaust manifold and then tighten it up again. So I removed the manifold in the exhaust pipe and I brought it over to my bench and I began the work of loosening the pack nut, okay? And after a couple of good tugs, I thought she'd come loose, but no. Actually, the exhaust manifold had simply cracked, okay? But still, that's not too bad for a piece of cast iron that's almost 100 years old, okay? I'd imagine a lot of the metal went out through the exhaust over the years. And even if it hadn't broken, it was warped. So it was going to have a hard time sealing. So I ordered a new exhaust manifold from Snyder's, and it came within a week. And I went ahead and got busy waiting. I went ahead and got busy on what was going on underneath the exhaust manifold while I was waiting for the parts to come in, okay? Now, if you take a close-up look here on the side of the engine block, okay, you can see these three shiny silver things that look like nickels. And of course they look like nickels because they actually are nickels, okay? These are called, most people call them freeze plugs. They're actually Welch plugs. And the purpose of a Welch plug is to cover the holes that were left when the engine was cast, okay? Originally the engine, in order to create voids inside the engine for the water to circulate through, the block was filled with sand. And once the casting was done, they would dump the sand out through these holes, okay? Well, upon examining this area, I noticed that the plug on the far side was really bad off, okay? Take a look at the plugs right here over on the bench, okay? And you can see the far left one was just pretty much gone, and the other two were very thin, okay? So I went ahead and removed them and then cleaned out the groove, which is inside. There's an area, basically a sort of a bevel on the inside of the hole where you can attach the new plug, okay? People call them freeze plugs because a secondary benefit of this plug is that if the water in your engine ever freezes during a bad freeze, then rather than the pressure cracking the engine block, it will theoretically pop the freeze plugs out and relieve pressure, but that doesn't always work. Anyway, through the advice of some of the guys in the Model T forum on Facebook, they told me to use the 15-cent solution. And what that is you take 3 nickels rather than using real freeze plugs. This is what the guys back in the 1920s used to do. They'd take a nickel out of their pocket and they'd put it on a socket or a wrench. In my case, I made a die out of some sheet metal, and in order to stiffen it, I put a socket underneath, okay? And then you simply take a nickel and you place it inside the die, and you take a ball-peen hammer, you press down on it, and then you whack on it with another hammer, and if you do it just right, you end up with a nicely formed, sort of a concave nickel, which fits in the freeze plug hole, okay? Now what you see here is these are some nickels that I practiced on. I practiced on modern nickels first, because I wanted to use authentic 1920s nickels for the actual freeze plugs, okay? So once I got the technique down pat, I went to the coin shop in River Ridge and I got some 1920s buffalo head nickels, or some people call them Indian head nickels, and I got a 25, a 26, and a 27, okay? And I went ahead and formed them out, and then I put some gasket sealer inside the hole around the rim, and I put each one in, and with a brass drift and a hammer, I dimpled them or pressed them in through the middle, okay? So what you've got here, you've got a 1925 Indian head nickel here, and then a 1926 Indian head nickel here, and a 1927 Indian head nickel here. That's in honor of my dad. He was born in 1927. Okay? It's hard to focus on this thing. Now, the one in the middle, I decided to let the buffalo show, and so you can't really see the date on the one in the middle. The date's on the other side. But here you can see our proud buffalo, and then we can see our Indian chief on either side, on the left and on the right. Okay? Once that was in, and my new manifold clamp studs had arrived, I went ahead and put in the new copper gaskets and gland rings. The gland rings are kind of a ring that protrudes from the hole in the manifold so that you can line up the exhaust manifold with the holes, okay? And I went ahead and tightened those up. These are all brand new studs. We don't want to have any broken studs causing your manifold to fall off after you finish the job, okay? Once that was done, it was time to reconnect the exhaust pipe, okay? So I went ahead and with a brand new brass pack nut, I slipped the nut over the exhaust pipe and placed it up against the manifold and tightened it up. And a nice little bit of surprise was that I didn't have to buy the authentic Model T pack nut wrench, which most of the guys like to use. I found one at Walmart, a very nice adjustable crescent wrench that was very slender, and it's actually made of vanadium steel, just like the Model T. So I went ahead and tightened it up, and then if you notice this little extra ring right here that's over it that has a tab going over the pack nut, what that does is it keeps the brass pack nut from coming undone. Now, once that was in, I thought I needed to actually tighten the neck on the muffler so that it would properly tighten around the exhaust pipe. Okay, let me see if I can get a better angle of it over here. Okay, whoops, excuse me, buddy. Well, I can't, buddy's on me, okay? Anyway, I couldn't figure out how to tighten a clamp around this thing. I figured I'd need to maybe cut some slots into the neck so that it would tighten around the exhaust pipe. So I posted the question online and found out that no, you're not actually supposed to tighten the exhaust pipe. It's supposed to just slide in loosely into the muffler, okay? And on the Model T, the muffler is kind of like a giant kazoo. The exhaust pipe just slips in there. It's not welded on. It's a cast iron muffler, and it's just basically hanging from the frame in two places, so it's nice and firm. And what happens is that the exhaust pipe expands and contracts with heat. And also, back during the 1920s, when the roads were really bad, it would be able to, adapt with the flexing of the body, okay, as you drove. Anyway, I finally got that all hooked up, and then with the help and advice of a man named Dan Treese, a really good Model T expert, I was able to hook up the choke system, okay? All of this was missing, okay? If you'll see this rod and the wire coming down, all of that was missing. Back in the old days, they had apparently lost it all and just replaced it with some coat hanger wire, okay? So Dan listed the components that I need to get, and I went ahead and got you can see here the little knob that's on the dashboard, okay? And you pull that out to choke the engine, and then you turn it this way or this way to increase or decrease the fuel mixture on the carburetor, okay? That's where the needle valve is located, okay? Right here where it connects, you have like a little universal joint that attaches to the needle valve right here, okay? The next step in this process has been to get the cooling system in gear, okay? Now, what I've done is I have replaced the old rotted radiator hoses, and I removed, this had an accessory water pump on that had seized up. This is where it was. And originally the Model T did not use a water pump. What it had was, there's a system where the cold water simply circulates through, okay? Your cool water goes up through this pipe from the radiator, and then It circulates up, and as it gets hot, it goes up through here, and it just works its way through, okay? It cools off in the radiator, and it continues to circulate. Anyway, this is the old water pump that I removed over here on the bench, right next to the dead exhaust manifold, okay? So here it is. And I might, fix it up and get it working again, but in the meantime, since it's not really necessary, I'm going to go ahead and go with the original stock setup, okay? So we've got the pipes all attached now, and the new intake neck, and the hoses, okay? And these are the authentic style radiator hose clamps, okay? I was ready to attach here, and I knew that there were going to be some issues with the radiator. I mean, you can look at this thing and tell. But what I found was that just below where this pipe goes into the hose, it's really eaten up, okay? So that's where I am now. I'm going to have to remove the radiator Monday and bring it to a shop, and hopefully they can repair it. Otherwise, I'll buy another radiator. But I wanted to actually do this film before I took the radiator off, because Model Ts look really funny without their radiators on, okay? They almost look like a frog. I mean, as you can see, the radiator is kind of like the nose of the Model T. And without its nose, it just looks like sort of a big-eyed frog. So that's where I am so far. And I know I've rambled a good bit. Hopefully I can do a better job of editing this one than I did with my last one. I think I rambled too long in the last video. But anyway, I'm going to give you one last side shot of the engine, because I'm really happy with how it's looking so far. Okay, maybe in the next video I'll show you the ignition coils. They're really beautiful. Okay, I am going to let you hear them. Okay, because when you start a Model T, what you do, first thing you do is you turn the key to battery, and if you can hear them, okay, those are the coils inside this box right here, okay, and they're generating high voltage, and then you crank it over, either using the hand crank or the starter button on the floor, okay? And if everything's all set right, she'll start right up. Now I'm thinking that once I put the radiator on and have it all nice and set up so that it'll run cool, I'll be able to start her up, okay? I want you to wish me luck, and I want to wish you all a happy 4th of July, and God bless America, okay? Take care. See you next time. Bye-bye.